We are joined today by former Broncos safety Nick Ferguson to talk about an old teammate of his, John Lynch, who is a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2021. Nick, appreciate you taking the time to chat today. Just to start, you spent 4 seasons with John Lynch here in Denver, I believe, so you got to know him pretty well. How much do you think this accomplishment is going to mean to him if he is selected to the Hall of Fame on Saturday?
Well, it's going to mean a lot to John and his family because John's been through this process, I think, 8 times now. And it's got to be nerve wracking to sit and wait in that room with your family, waiting to hear the knock on the door. And all of a sudden you get the phone call. And if you get the phone call, obviously, that year wasn't your year. So it's going to be great for John. He's definitely accomplished a lot as a player. We're talking 9 times Pro Bowl. I mean, there are not too many safeties in this league that can actually say this, but hopefully this is the weekend that John finally gets the knock instead of the call.
A Super Bowl champion, you said it, 9-time Pro Bowl safety, one of the most feared hitters in the league. What was it about John Lynch's game that made him so good and ultimately a Hall of Fame finalist?
Well, first and foremost, you hit the nail on the head. It was how fierce of a competitor he was, but how physical he was. John really dominated the game, and John was one of those players I watched when I came into the league, and I told my agent the first time I become a free agent, I want to join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he asked me why. I was like, what do you mean why? I mean, because of John Lynch. John just had that type of influence on so many players that he's been around. He had that influence on our secondary when it was just John, myself, and Champ Bailey in that secondary. And then also, just look what John was able to do in Tampa, where they won a Super Bowl, and Warren Sapp in the Hall of Fame. Derek Brooks in the Hall of Fame. John Lynch, not in the Hall of Fame just yet, but John roaming the middle of the field was very intimidating for a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers. And, John left his mark on the game. If you watch some of the players, the way they play and how they come downhill and that physicality that they bring, all that is due in part because they grew up like I did watching John Lynch play.
Yeah, you had already been here for one season, I think, before John had signed with the team. And you kind of mentioned this already, but what type of addition was he to the secondary and to the locker room overall?
Well, you first have to start with the leadership, part of things. I mean, John, he was used to leading a lot of guys with a lot of their own personalities down in Tampa. So when he came to Denver, we didn't have that many personalities in the locker room, but we were still a group that were trying to figure out, how we fit and gel together. And John was kind of that glue player. And when you look at safeties, they're like the quarterbacks of the defense. John did a great job of just kind of communicating to a lot of guys, getting us, all lined up. And I mean, it just made our secondary that much better because if John made a play, I felt as though I needed to make 3 plays. And then John, if he saw me make a play, now he's like, well, I'm not going to allow Nick, and he called me Nico. He's like, I'm not going to allow Nico to outshine me. So because we had that type of, leadership and personality in our secondary, it made every man that much better.
Like you mentioned, we all know that he had immense talent on the field, but what can you tell me about the type of person John was or is?
Well, John, you know what? John is a great person, off the field. John does a lot of charity work, and he still does that now, even though he's in San Francisco and he's their GM. But I'll tell you, how much of a person or how much I looked up to John. There was a training camp situation where I saw John on the field with his youngest son, and John was doing wind sprints, and his son was wearing the shoulder pads and his helmet. And I sat down for a second and I just kind of looked at John and his son and I said, you know what? That is what I want, in my life. I need some of that in my life. And it's great to play this great game that we're blessed to play, but you can't really do that without having family members to share with. So John was always humble. He was never one of those guys that said, you know what? I'm John Lynch. I've been to a Super Bowl. I'm a 9-time Pro Bowler. And now you have to try to get on my level. No, he was always one of those type of guys that always cared about how you develop on the field, but more importantly, how you develop off the field as a father and as a man.
Yeah. Do you have any more fun memories or stories of John that you think Broncos country might want to hear? I feel like you definitely do.
Well, yeah, I do. Some I can't tell, some I will tell. So there was a situation when we were playing our rivals, Kansas City Chiefs. And at that time, the league had already changed the rules as far as where you can hit a wide receiver. And for now, we looked at it like baseball, like pretty much the strike zone.
Yes.
So Eddie Kennison he caught a touchdown pass in the end zone, and John was running towards him, looking to hit him in his chest. But when he ducked, when John finally got there, John ended up striking him, in the helmet. And there was a flag that followed. And the ref came up to John. And once again, John played in the league a long time. And so many referees know John and vice versa. So those two are trying to debate and go back and forth what was right, what was wrong in that particular situation. And hearing those two do that, it sounded like an old school version of People's Court, right? And all I could do is stand there and laugh and watch it. But that was kind of like, who John Lynch was. He wasn't one of those type of players that was going to allow something to happen and not really stand up for himself or his teammates. But these are all the reasons and characteristics that John possessed as a leader, and a reason why John should be, in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he wasn't going to take no for an answer there, was
No,
he?
he was not. He was not.
Well, Nick, thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for sharing everything about John. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.